Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a world of big hair, bigger shoulder pads, and magazines that quietly convinced an entire generation that their thighs were public enemies. Welcome to the glossy, airbrushed battlefield of 1980s fashion media. Not the neon montage version with synth music and triumphant jogging scenes. I mean the real thing. Fluorescent lights, aggressive makeup counters, and magazine covers that somehow made everyone feel both inspired and slightly ashamed at the same time. So before you get comfortable, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what I do here. And feel free to leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always amazing seeing how many people end up drifting off to history together around the world. Now dim the lights a little, maybe turn on a fan for that soft white noise, get comfortable, and gently tuck yourself into whatever blanket currently feels like emotional support. Let's pause for a moment and ask a few important questions. Have you ever opened a magazine and suddenly felt like your entire body needed to file for early retirement? Have you ever wondered who decided that perfect beauty meant having the body fat percentage of a decorative lampshade? What would it feel like to grow up in a world where every checkout line quietly suggested your face, your hair, your skin, your waistline, and possibly your personality all needed improvement? What happens when the most powerful beauty advice in the world comes from glossy pages edited by people who think dinner is 3 olives and a sigh? And perhaps most importantly, how did millions of perfectly normal women end up believing that the human body was some kind of project that required constant emergency repairs? Well, congratulations, you've just woken up in 1985. Your hair is aggressively feathered, your jeans are alarmingly tight, and sitting on your kitchen table is a towering stack of fashion magazines that are about to explain in great detail why everything about you is apparently wrong. Good luck. You begin your day standing in a grocery store checkout line somewhere in suburban America around 1983. To your left, chewing gum. To your right, an entire wall of glossy magazines staring directly into your soul. Cosmopolitan, Vogue, Glamour, Elle, 17, Shape, Self, and at least 4 others promising to transform your life, your body, and possibly your romantic destiny. Each cover features a model smiling confidently while possessing a waist that appears to have been assembled by NASA engineers. You weren't planning to buy one. You only came here for milk, maybe some bread, and whatever cereal happens to be on sale this week. But the magazines are positioned exactly at eye level, which is not an accident. The publishing industry understands the human brain extremely well, especially the part that says, well, maybe just one quick look. So you pick one up. The paper feels thick and glossy, like it was polished by a small army of interns who were told the fate of Western civilization depended on shine. The cover promises things that sound both helpful and slightly threatening. Lose us 10 pounds before summer, the 7 hairstyles that will change your life, secrets. Men wish women knew how to finally get the body you deserve. You're not entirely sure what body you deserve, but the magazine seems extremely confident it has opinions. You flip it open. Inside, the pages are packed with carefully curated perfection. Models laugh on beaches with wind machines that appear to operate exclusively in professional photography studios. Women jog gracefully along scenic coastal paths without sweating, breathing heavily, or questioning their life choices. You begin to notice something interesting. Everyone in these photographs looks relaxed, effortless, radiantly happy in a way that suggests they woke up that morning naturally flawless, drank a glass of lemon water, and casually solved their entire life before noon. Meanwhile, you're standing in line holding a gallon of milk and wondering if you remembered to pay the electricity bill. Welcome to the magazine empire. This isn't just reading material, it's an entire ecosystem. A glossy universe where fashion, beauty, fitness, romance, and mild existential panic all live together in perfect harmony. Every page is trying to help you improve something. Your hair could be shinier, your skin could be smoother, your wardrobe could be trendier, your body could be, well, slightly less like a normal human body and slightly more like a gazelle that does Pilates. The advice is presented kindly, almost warmly, like a cheerful friend who also happens to believe your thighs are a national emergency. And it's not just one magazine, it's all of them. Every month, millions of copies travel across the country in trucks and airplanes, eventually arriving in grocery stores, drugstores, hair salons, waiting rooms, and living rooms. Entire stacks appear on coffee tables, like colourful monuments to the idea that self-improvement never takes a day off. You read an article about fitness. Apparently the secret to happiness involves leg lifts, lunges, and something called a targeted abdominal routine, which sounds suspiciously like medieval torture but with better lighting. Then you turn the page and see a fashion spread. 6 models wearing shoulder pads large enough to qualify as minor aircraft carriers walk confidently down a Manhattan street, while photographers pretend this is a totally normal way for humans to move through traffic. Somehow, between the perfume ads and makeup tutorials, a quiet message begins settling in. Life could be better. You could be better. Just a few improvements away from becoming the woman smiling on page 12, who seems to own several elegant blazers and no visible worries. You close the magazine for a moment. The cashier scans your groceries. Someone behind you sighs impatiently. Somewhere in the distance, a shopping cart squeaks dramatically across tile flooring. And yet that glossy universe is still sitting there in your hands, bright, polished, confident, waiting patiently to explain how to fix absolutely everything about you. Not aggressively, just helpfully, which somehow makes it even more persuasive. Inside those magazines live the women of the decade's imagination, the emerging supermodels, tall, impossibly lean, photographed under lighting conditions normally reserved for Renaissance paintings. Women like Cindy Crawford and Elle Macpherson begin appearing everywhere. They are beautiful, confident, and presented as effortlessly perfect. What the magazine does not show you is the army of stylists, lighting technicians, makeup artists, and photographers required to make effortless perfection happen before breakfast. To you, flipping through the pages in a quiet living room somewhere in 1985, it looks almost magical. The model stands on a beach with wind gently lifting her hair, as if the weather itself is personally invested in her success. Her skin glows like someone installed a small sunrise just off camera. Her smile suggests she woke up 5 minutes ago, stretched casually, and accidentally became the most beautiful person on the continent. It all feels wonderfully natural. But somewhere just outside the frame is a scene that looks less like effortless beauty and more like a small construction project. There's a stylist adjusting a single strand of hair with surgical precision, a makeup artist holding 3 different brushes and a look of intense concentration. A photographer crouching, standing, crouching again, then dramatically declaring, "No, no, the light is wrong." Someone is holding a giant reflective panel the size of a car door. Someone else is spraying hair product into the atmosphere like they're trying to deplete the ozone layer personally. And the model herself? She has probably been awake since 5 a.m. Not because she woke up glowing with divine radiance, but because photo shoots take time. Hair takes time. Makeup takes time. Lighting takes time. The perfect shot might take dozens, sometimes hundreds of attempts before anyone decides the moment has finally arrived. But none of that appears in the magazine. Instead, you see the final image, clean, polished, perfect, a single frozen moment that quietly implies beauty is simple, effortless, natural, which is a bit like watching the Olympic gymnastics finals and assuming the athletes just woke up one day and casually started flipping through the air. Let's talk about the supermodel phenomenon for a moment. In the 1980s, fashion modelling begins transforming into something bigger than clothing. Models are no longer just people wearing outfits. They are becoming celebrities, recognisable faces, cultural icons. Their names start appearing in conversations. Cindy Crawford, Elle Macpherson, Christy Turlington, Paulina Porizkova. These women become symbols of an entire decade's idea of beauty, and because they appear everywhere, magazines, billboards, advertisements, television, something subtle begins happening in the minds of readers. The human brain starts treating these images as normal. You see them so often that your brain quietly recalibrates its expectations. Tall becomes standard. Extremely thin becomes ordinary. Skin without pores becomes the default setting for humanity. Meanwhile, the average person standing in front of their bathroom mirror in Kansas, Ohio, or California is still dealing with regular human realities. Hair that refuses to cooperate. Skin that occasionally behaves like it has strong personal opinions. And a body that was built for walking, sitting, working and living, not necessarily for posing under studio lights while someone adjusts a fan to create dramatic hair movement. But the magazines rarely mention that. Instead, they offer helpful advice. How to get the supermodel glow, how to achieve runway confidence, how to slim your waistline with 3 easy exercises that definitely look easier when performed by someone who has been professionally trained to look graceful while standing still. None of this is malicious exactly, it's aspirational. Fashion magazines aren't trying to make you miserable, they're trying to sell dreams. Dreams of confidence, beauty, and a life where your hair always moves perfectly in the wind. But dreams can be tricky things, because when you see them enough times, month after month, issue after issue, they start feeling less like fantasies and more like expectations. And that's the quiet power of the supermodel illusion. It doesn't shout, it doesn't demand, it simply smiles from the page with impossible calm and says, "This is what perfection looks like." Now let's talk about how those magazines slowly began defining exactly what the perfect body was supposed to be. Somewhere between the beauty section and the perfume advertisements, a quiet revolution is happening. Fashion magazines begin publishing exact measurements for the ideal female body. Bust, waist, hips, numbers that become strangely powerful. Numbers that imply if your body deviates even slightly, you have somehow wandered off the official map of attractiveness. At first it seems harmless. Just a few statistics printed neatly beside a photo of a smiling model wearing something dramatic involving shoulder pads and heels that look legally dangerous. The article might call it something friendly like the ideal figure or your best shape. 3 numbers appear: bust, waist, hips. They sit there calmly on the page like coordinates on a treasure map, except the treasure is apparently your self-esteem. Now, historically speaking, humans have always admired certain body shapes. Ancient sculptures celebrated curves. Renaissance paintings adored softness. If you look at classical art long enough, you begin to suspect that medieval painters would have been very confused by aerobics videos. But the 1980s introduces something slightly new: precision. Instead of vague ideas about beauty, magazines begin presenting numbers, exact measurements, ratios that supposedly represent the perfect female silhouette. And numbers feel official, numbers feel scientific. Numbers feel like they came from a laboratory somewhere where experts in white coats studied beauty under microscopes. The reality, of course, is slightly less dramatic. These measurements are mostly based on fashion industry preferences. Designers create clothing samples in specific sizes. Models are chosen to fit those samples. The result slowly becomes a standard. Not necessarily because it's biologically ideal, just because it fits the clothes. But when those numbers arrive in magazines, they start taking on a life of their own. You might be sitting on a couch flipping through pages while half watching television, and suddenly you see the chart. Bust, this number. Waist, this number. Hips, this number. Your brain does something very human. It compares. Maybe your waist is a little different. Maybe your hips don't match the blueprint exactly. Maybe your body, like most human bodies, decided long ago that it would rather focus on keeping you alive than meeting editorial standards set in Manhattan. But the numbers sit there quietly suggesting that perfection is measurable, that beauty can be reduced to geometry. It's almost architectural. You begin imagining the human body as a blueprint, lines, ratios, angles, like someone is planning a house instead of describing a person. And if the blueprint isn't quite right, well, don't worry. The magazine has solutions. Turn the page and you'll find exercises designed to slim the waistline, diet tips meant to reshape the hips, fashion tricks that promise to create the illusion of the correct proportions. It's like an ongoing home renovation project, except the house in question is you. And unlike a kitchen remodel, this project never seems to finish. Because even when someone gets close to the numbers, the target quietly moves. New trends appear. Suddenly the waist should be smaller, the legs should be longer, the body should look athletic but also delicate, strong but also impossibly slim. It's a delicate balancing act that would make a circus performer nervous. And yet millions of readers absorb these measurements month after month. Not always consciously. Sometimes they just sit quietly in the back of the mind. You might not remember the exact numbers, but the idea remains that there is a correct shape, a correct ratio, a correct version of the human body, and everything else is a small deviation from the plan. Of course, reality is a little messier than that. Human bodies are wildly different. Genetics, culture, nutrition, lifestyle, everything shapes how people grow and move through the world. Trying to force billions of bodies into a single blueprint is a bit like trying to design one pair of shoes that fits the entire planet. Technically ambitious, practically impossible, but the magazines keep printing the numbers, and over time, those numbers become part of the cultural background noise of the decade. Quiet, persistent, just sitting there on glossy pages gently suggesting that perfection might be only a few inches away. Next, the magazines will introduce the tool that promises to help reach those measurements: diet culture. Now we arrive at the diet section, and there is always a diet section. Grapefruit diets, cabbage soup diets, liquid diets, snack bars made from ingredients that may or may not be legally classified as food, entire pages dedicated to losing 10 pounds before summer, as if summer were a strict dress code enforced by the weather itself. You flip the page and suddenly the magazine transforms from a fashion guide into something resembling a nutritional boot camp. Large bold headlines greet you with calm urgency. Drop 2 dress sizes, fast the weekend, slim down. Plan 5 foods that are secretly ruining your life. The tone is never angry, it's cheerful, encouraging, like a very enthusiastic friend who believes your metabolism simply needs a firm but loving lecture. Let's start with the grapefruit diet. This particular strategy involves eating grapefruit at nearly every meal, presumably until you begin to feel emotionally connected to citrus fruit. Breakfast, grapefruit. Lunch, grapefruit. Dinner, still grapefruit, now accompanied by the quiet realization that you may never look at a fruit bowl the same way again. Then there's the cabbage soup diet. This one is fairly straightforward. You cook a massive pot of cabbage soup and eat it repeatedly for several days. The magazine describes it as cleansing and revitalizing. What it does not mention is that eating cabbage soup for a week might also transform your kitchen into a location that requires careful ventilation and possibly an apology to your neighbours. But diet culture in the 1980s isn't just about individual foods, it's about discipline. Magazines frame dieting almost like a personal challenge, a test of willpower, a journey where the reward is a smaller number on the bathroom scale and the deeply satisfying feeling that you've conquered carbohydrates. You read suggestions about calorie counting, portion control, and something called guilt-free snacking, which is a phrase that quietly implies the existence of very guilty snacks somewhere nearby. And then there are the meal replacement products, snack bars, diet shakes, powdered drinks that promise to deliver nutrition in a glass while somehow tasting like vanilla optimism. Many of these products are designed for convenience. Instead of cooking a full meal, you simply open a wrapper, drink a shake, and reassure yourself that this is a sensible adult decision. It's a bit like replacing dinner with a science experiment, but the magazines present it all with such confidence. Every plan promises results. 10 pounds in 2 weeks, a flatter stomach before beach season, a body that finally matches the ideal measurements printed a few pages earlier. You begin to notice something interesting. Summer appears to be extremely important. Articles speak about it as if the entire population of the world is preparing for a giant inspection, where someone with a clipboard will evaluate everyone's thighs. Get ready for summer beach. Body countdown. Slim down before swimsuit season. Apparently the sun itself is judging you now. The strange thing is that dieting advice is often paired directly beside food advertisements. One page explains how to reduce calorie intake. The next page shows a full-colour photo of a chocolate dessert that looks like it was sculpted by Michelangelo. The human brain is not always equipped for this level of emotional whiplash. But diet culture thrives in this environment. Because dieting isn't just about food, it's about control. Control over appetite. Control over appearance. Control over a body that, inconveniently, was designed by nature to store energy and enjoy snacks. Of course, not everyone follows these diets exactly. Many readers skim the articles, nod thoughtfully, and then continue eating regular meals like normal humans. But the ideas remain. They sit quietly in the background. Maybe I should eat less. Maybe I should lose a little weight. Maybe that summer deadline is coming faster than expected. And month after month the diet section returns. New plans, new rules, new promises. Always just one page away from the fashion spreads, and just ahead another trend is about to arrive that promises a more energetic solution to the problem. Aerobics. Flip another page and suddenly everyone is exercising. Aerobics has arrived. Bright leotards, leg warmers, Jane Fonda cheerfully leading millions through routines that involve bouncing enthusiastically while smiling as if this is the best thing that has ever happened to your lungs. Fitness becomes fashionable, but also quietly mandatory. Before this moment, exercise was something athletes did. Runners ran, gymnasts stretched, weightlifters grunted loudly in basements, but the average person, they maybe took a walk after dinner or occasionally moved a couch when vacuuming. Then the 1980s arrive, and suddenly fitness is everywhere. You turn on the television, and there's Jane Fonda, glowing like she's powered by pure optimism, leading a workout that seems to defy several known laws of biology. She kicks, she stretches, she lifts her arms to the heavens, all while maintaining a smile that suggests she's not, in fact, in physical discomfort. You flip to another channel, and there's Richard Simmons bouncing across the screen in sequined shorts, telling America that sweating is joyful. Even grocery store magazines join the movement. Inside the glossy pages, models demonstrate exercises with perfect posture. Simple moves for a better body, the captions promise, as if your life will immediately improve once you master the art of synchronized leg lifts. And the outfits. Oh, the outfits. Leotards cut high enough to challenge gravity. Bright neon colours that could guide ships through fog. Leg warmers that appear to serve no functional purpose beyond emotional support. headbands worn not to manage sweat but to complete the ceremonial uniform of the aerobics tribe. You start to feel like maybe you should join them. Everyone else seems to be doing it, your neighbour, your co-workers, the people in TV commercials, possibly even your cat, if the way it stretches in the morning is any indication. Magazines dedicate entire sections to home workouts. No gym membership, no problem. You can exercise in your living room using only a carpeted floor, a sturdy chair, and a level of enthusiasm that may or may not be achievable on a weekday morning. They promise fast results, sleek legs in 2 weeks, tone your arms by Saturday, flatten your stomach before your next family gathering. All you need to do is follow 12 uncomplicated steps that involve lifting your limbs at angles that feel suspiciously non-human. And the photos always show people smiling while doing these routines. Not sweating, not trembling, not questioning their decisions, just smiling. This sets unrealistic expectations for you, the reader. Because when you attempt your first aerobics workout, you discover that your lungs have strong opinions about this entire situation. After 10 minutes of bouncing, stretching, and trying to imitate someone who appears to have been carved from optimism, you find yourself negotiating with your own legs for continued cooperation. But the magazines insist it's worth it. Fitness isn't just about health anymore, it's about aesthetics. You're not exercising to feel good, you're exercising to sculpt and tighten and transform. Body parts are now projects. Your arms should be toned but not bulky. Your waist should be slim but not too slim. Your legs should look strong but also delicate, a balance that nature did not design for casually. Aerobics becomes a cultural event. Classes fill up in gyms across the country. Music blasts from cassette players. People move together in giant coordinated groups, sweating in unison under fluorescent lighting that makes everyone look slightly heroic and slightly frightened. Even shopping malls get involved. Stores sell aerobics outfits in every imaginable neon shade. Workout videos appear in window displays. Magazines declare that fitness is not just a hobby, it's a lifestyle, and with that comes pressure. If everyone else is working on their body, shouldn't you be? The message isn't shouted. It's whispered, encouraging, supportive, but persistent. Aerobics promises empowerment, confidence, transformation. Yet beneath the surface, another idea blooms quietly. If you're not working on yourself, you're falling behind. And just when you think you've mastered the art of high-knee marches without losing balance, the next trend arrives. One that doesn't just suggest fitness, it suggests thinness. The 1980s quietly turns thinness into the defining beauty standard. Not healthy, not strong, thin, extremely thin. Fashion photography begins emphasizing long limbs, narrow waists, and angular frames that photograph well under studio lighting but are not exactly common in everyday human populations. Thinness isn't new to fashion, of course. Designers have always preferred bodies that function like living hangers, straight, minimal curves, easy to drape clothing on. But in the 1980s, something shifts. Thinness stops being an aesthetic preference and becomes a full cultural movement, a requirement, a goal, a lifestyle. You flip through your favourite magazine and it's everywhere. Models appear in ads with collarbones so sharp they could slice cheese. Editorial spreads highlight the slender silhouette with the kind of reverence usually reserved for religious icons. Even workout sections, supposedly about health, frequently feature bodies that look less like the result of exercise and more like the result of eating very lightly for the past 6 months. And the message is subtle but unmistakable. This is the ideal. This is beauty. This is what you should aim for. Your body? Well, it could be improved. It doesn't matter that the average woman's body is built to store energy for survival, or that genetics control most weight distribution. Magazines treat thinness like something you can DIY, over a long weekend with a few salads and a well-timed aerobics class. In one issue, you see a model standing on a breezy cliff, wearing a flowing dress looking ethereal. In the next, you see a diet plan promising you'll look exactly like her if you simply commit to mindful eating and consume a suspicious number of carrot sticks. This becomes the decade of the long and lean body. Legs for days. Waists you could wrap a friendship bracelet around. Arms so slim they make you wonder if the model has ever experienced the burden of carrying groceries. Meanwhile, everyday women are sitting at kitchen tables, reading these pages over morning coffee, quietly absorbing the idea that their natural bodies, soft, round, human, are somehow mistakes that require correction. Fashion designers lean hard into this trend. Runways showcase clothing that hangs elegantly on extremely small frames. Patterns and silhouettes are built around straight lines, not curves. And because fashion imagery influences magazines, and magazines influence culture, the cycle reinforces itself like a neon-coloured feedback loop. Even brand messaging shifts. Words like slim, compact and streamlined appear everywhere, as if human beings are suddenly expected to come in aerodynamic shapes. And then comes the rise of the heroin chic ideal, still a few years off but already warming up backstage. Thinness becomes more than a trend. It becomes the default, the template, the unspoken standard women compare themselves to at every mirror, every fitting room, every high school dance. But the strangest part, people begin acting as if this has always been the goal. Never mind that curves were celebrated in the 1950s, or that athletic figures became popular in the 1970s. The 1980s quietly erases all that and installs thin as the new normal. And if you don't naturally fit that mold, the magazines have endless solutions. Try this new meal plan. Follow this intense aerobic routine. Buy this shapewear that promises to gently guide your body toward a more flattering line. The phrase gently guide is doing a lot of heavy lifting there. The pressure operates on two levels. Out loud, magazines speak gently about improvement, confidence, feeling your best. But underneath, the unspoken message thrums like a low-frequency radio signal. Be smaller, take up less space, disappears just a little. You begin to understand why the decade leaves such a long shadow. Because thinness isn't presented as an option, it's presented as an expectation. And once the expectation settles in, it takes years, decades, to unravel. But we're not done yet. Because while adult women are wrestling with this new gold standard, an entirely different audience is quietly absorbing it too. Teenagers. Now imagine you're 16. You walk into a drugstore and pick up 17 magazine. Inside are articles explaining how to attract boys, fix your hair, contour your face, and most importantly how to avoid gaining weight during the upcoming holiday season. The magazine is cheerful, supportive, and gently convinced that your body's a problem that requires careful management. You flip the pages while standing between racks of lip gloss and travel-size shampoo. Around you the store hums quietly, cash registers beeping, fluorescent lights buzzing faintly overhead. But inside the magazine everything feels louder, more urgent, like the editors are whispering, "Welcome to womanhood, sweetheart. Here's the rule book, don't mess it up." For a teenager in the 1980s, these magazines are less reading material and more cultural instruction manuals. They teach you how to dress, how to behave, how to flirt, how to respond to acne emergencies, and without ever saying it outright, how to shrink yourself respectfully so that you fit the mold the decade has prepared for you. It starts small. A headline reads, 5 ways to look slimmer in your school photos. You're not quite sure why this matters so much, but the magazine says it with the confidence of someone handing down a sacred prophecy. Another page provides a helpful checklist for winter break. Stay active so you don't gain holiday weight. The exclamation point makes it sound festive. It's strange, really. You're 16. You should be focused on homework, mixtapes, and arguments with your parents about curfew. But the magazine insists your top priority is ensuring your thighs remain on good behaviour, and so begins the teenage initiation into body monitoring. You compare yourself constantly to your friends, to the models in the magazine, to the girls in the movies, even to your own reflection, which now feels like a mild adversary whose performance needs reviewing. The articles are written in a friendly tone, like advice from an older sister who means well, but has been thoroughly brainwashed by the beauty standards of the era. Try this lip gloss to make your smile irresistible. Do these 3 exercises every night for a more toned look. Wear vertical stripes to appear slimmer. The word slimmer appears approximately every 7 minutes. And the wild part. None of this feels extreme at the time. It feels normal. Every girl you know is reading the same magazines. Every girl you know is absorbing the same message. Becoming attractive is your job now. A full-time job, actually, with no paid vacation days and constant performance evaluations. Even school corridors become fashion runways. You show up wearing the outfit you pieced together after 20 minutes of standing in front of your closet, wondering what combination might make you resemble the girls in the magazine. They look effortless. You look like you attempted effortlessness and pulled a hamstring in the process. Lunch becomes a strategic battlefield. You watch what you eat, not because you want to, but because the magazine assured you that holiday weight gain is lurking around every corner like a festive villain. Your friend brings a sandwich, hesitates and whispers, "I shouldn't eat bread." None of you know exactly why bread has suddenly become the enemy, but you all nod solemnly like this is ancient wisdom passed down from the elders. And then there are the quizzes. Magazines in the 1980s are obsessed with quizzes. What's your flirting style? Are you summer, winter, or confused? But the most insidious are the ones that quietly evaluate your body. How body confident are you? Is your weight healthy? You circle answers, tally points, and discover, shockingly, that you should probably work on yourself. The quiz is designed that way. It's like a personality test where the only correct personality is trying harder. You tear out workout routines and tape them to your bedroom wall. You try contouring your face for the first time and end up looking vaguely like a Renaissance nobleman. You practice smiling in the mirror because the magazine says confidence starts with presentation, which is a fancy way of saying everything about you is up for review. By the time you're done reading, something subtle has shifted. You're no longer just you. You're a project, a draft, a work in progress awaiting updates. Being 16 is already confusing. Being 16 and reading fashion magazines in the 1980s is like being handed a puzzle with missing pieces and being told it's your responsibility to make it look perfect anyway. And as this glossy education spreads across bedrooms, locker rooms, malls and high school cafeterias, a generation of girls quietly begins developing the same thought. Maybe I'm not enough the way I am. Next, the magazines will escalate their efforts by introducing an entire system of beauty routines designed to keep teenage girls, and every other woman, working on themselves from morning until night. Magazines begin outlining daily beauty routines that sound suspiciously like part-time employment. Morning skincare, afternoon touch-ups, evening cleansing rituals involving multiple creams, toners, exfoliants and moisturizers. If medieval peasants had seen this routine, they would have assumed it was a religious ceremony. You sit on your bed, magazine open, reading a step-by-step guide titled something like Your Perfect Daily Routine, as if perfection can be scheduled neatly between breakfast and algebra homework. The routine begins at sunrise with a gentle cleanser, followed by a toner, followed by a hydrating serum described as life-changing, followed by a moisturizer that costs more than your weekly allowance. And this is just the morning shift. As you read, the magazine's tone becomes increasingly confident, almost scolding in its enthusiasm. Never skip exfoliation. It commands, as if skipping exfoliation might personally offend the editorial team. Always pat your moisturiser, never rub. If you rub, presumably the universe will collapse in on itself. Even the order of application feels like advanced chemistry. Cleanser, toner, serum, moisturiser, sunscreen. Then makeup primer, foundation, concealer, powder, blush, contour, eyeshadow, eyeliner, mascara, lipstick, lip liner. By the time you finish listing the steps, you need a snack and possibly a nap. The magazine insists all of this is essential for maintenance. Maintenance, as if your face is a mid-century house that needs constant upkeep to avoid scaring neighbours. Then there's the evening routine. You're instructed to remove your makeup using a cleansing oil, followed by a foaming wash, followed by another toner, just in case the morning toner wasn't respected enough. Then comes night cream, which sounds like something royalty might wear during politically stressful eras. And don't forget the special treatments, a weekly mask to revitalise tired skin, an occasional clay treatment for detoxing impurities, a bi-weekly deep exfoliation to brighten dullness. By the time you finish the checklist, you've spent so long in the bathroom, your family starts knocking on the door to confirm you're still alive. But the magazines don't stop at skin. Hair needs its own ritual. You're expected to use a volumizing shampoo, a nourishing conditioner, a leave-in treatment, a heat protectant spray, and possibly a mousse that promises to make your hair behave like a more glamorous version of itself. The instructions imply that hair is fundamentally rebellious and must be subdued with products and diplomacy. Then come nails, not just painted, maintained, cuticles moisturized, nails filed in one direction only. Apparently filing in two directions is an act of violence. Polish applied in careful vertical strokes, and of course, removed and redone whenever it chips, which usually occurs the moment you do anything practical like opening a soda can. The beauty routine becomes a cycle. Morning preparation, afternoon adjustments, evening restoration. It feels less like a routine and more like a shift schedule. You begin to realise that the magazine is subtly promoting a worldview in which beauty is labour. Constant labour. Invisible labour. Labour that only you are responsible for, and that labour is never complete. There's always a new product to try, a new trick to incorporate, a new trend to obey. Your eyebrows should be thinner. No, thicker. No, arched. No, natural but sculpted, like wild animals that have agreed to follow simple dress code standards. What's wild is that readers take these routines seriously, not because they're silly, but because the magazines pitch them as necessary for real life. Want to get a job? Look polished. Want to date? Look desirable. Want to exist in public peacefully? Look put together. Beauty becomes a requirement, not an option, and every requirement arrives with steps, rules, and products. This transforms the bathroom counter into something resembling a chemistry lab, overflowing with tiny containers promising to firm, brighten, plump, refine, lift, soften, or restore radiance, which is a phrase so vague it could refer to literally anything. You aren't just a person anymore. You're a caretaker of your own face, and the job has no weekends off. But just when you think the routine might stabilise, when you finally memorise which creams go on which parts of your face, and in what order, the magazines introduce a new battlefield. Makeup. Not for fun, not for creativity, but for shaping, sculpting, and transforming your features into the most magazine-approved version of you. The beauty arms race is officially underway. The makeup industry explodes during the decade. Blue eyeshadow, frosted lipstick. Blush applied with the enthusiasm of someone painting a barn. Magazines teach readers how to sculpt cheekbones, enlarge eyes, and reshape faces using tools that look increasingly similar to art supplies. You turn the page and suddenly the magazine stops being a lifestyle guide and becomes a tactical manual. Step 1. Prepare the canvas. That's your face. The language is surprisingly artistic. Articles talk about highlighting structure and defining natural contours, which is a polite way of saying the magazine would like you to redraw several parts of your face before leaving the house. First comes foundation. The goal, according to the magazine, is to achieve a flawless base. This requires carefully applying a layer of liquid makeup designed to make your skin look smooth, even, and vaguely airbrushed, long before computers ever learned how to do that digitally. You dab it on your cheeks, your forehead, your chin. Blend carefully. Blend more carefully. Blend until your arms begin questioning the entire concept of beauty. Next comes concealer, a magical substance whose job is to hide anything that might suggest you're a living human being with pores, shadows, or the occasional late night. Dark circles? Gone. Tiny blemish? Disappeared. The magazine assures you that with the right technique, your face can appear as calm and serene as a marble statue. Then comes powder, not a light dusting either. The 1980s favours a generous application, because nothing says natural beauty like a layer of powder capable of surviving a mild windstorm. Once the base is complete, it's time for colour. Blush arrives with enthusiasm, and by enthusiasm we mean enthusiasm. Magazine diagrams often suggest applying blush high across the cheekbones, sweeping outward toward the temples in wide strokes. The effect, when performed correctly, creates the impression of healthy glow. When performed slightly incorrectly, which happens frequently, it creates the impression that you ran face first into a sunset. Then we reach the eyes. Ah, yes. The 1980s eyeshadow palette is a bold one. Electric blue, vivid purple, shimmering silver. The goal is not subtlety. The goal is presence. You follow the instructions carefully. Apply a base colour across the lid, then layer a darker shade into the crease to create depth. Add a touch of shimmer near the brow bone for brightness. By the time you're done, your eyelids resemble a small abstract painting, but the magazine assures you this is correct. Now comes eyeliner. Thin lines are acceptable, but thick lines are encouraged. The eyeliner traces along your lashes, occasionally extending outward in dramatic flicks designed to make your eyes appear larger and more mysterious. And then there is mascara. Layer after layer of it. The magazine suggests applying multiple coats for maximum volume. Each swipe thickens your lashes until they resemble the wings of a very fashionable insect. Blink carefully. Too much mascara, and your eyelashes may briefly fuse together, creating a new cosmetic category known as temporary blindness with glamour. Finally, lipstick. Not just any lipstick. Frosted lipstick. The kind that catches the light like a disco ball and reflects it back toward unsuspecting observers. Colours range from soft pink to metallic mauve, often paired with a lip liner to carefully redraw the outline of your mouth. Because in the 1980s, even lips are negotiable, and suddenly, the transformation is complete. You look in the mirror and see a version of yourself that is brighter, sharper, more dramatic than the person who woke up that morning. Magazines describe this as empowerment, and in some ways it is. Makeup can be creative, expressive, fun, but there is also a quiet pressure behind it. Because once the tools exist, and once the techniques are widely known, a new expectation emerges. If makeup can transform your face, shouldn't you be using it? If the magazines show every model fully styled, fully polished, fully enhanced, shouldn't you at least try? And so the makeup arms race begins. Each year brings new products, new brushes, new palettes promising better contouring, brighter highlights, longer lashes. You're not just applying makeup anymore, you're engineering a face. And just when you think the transformation is complete, another powerful force enters the story. Advertising. Every second page is an advertisement. perfume ads featuring mysterious models standing near oceans, hair products promising volume that defies the laws of atmospheric pressure, clothing ads that imply owning this jacket will somehow improve your entire existence. You flip through the magazine and begin noticing a pattern. One page offers helpful advice about building confidence. The next page features a perfume ad where a woman in an elegant black dress gazes dramatically toward the horizon, as if she has just solved several emotional mysteries and possibly inherited a castle. The implication is subtle but persistent. Buy this fragrance. Become this woman. Perfume advertisements in the 1980s are particularly theatrical. They rarely explain what the scent actually smells like. Instead, they tell stories. Stories about romance, adventure, and mysterious seaside evenings where everyone appears to have perfect hair, despite standing next to extremely aggressive wind. The model might be walking along a cliff overlooking the ocean, or stepping out of a sports car, or staring thoughtfully into the distance while wearing a gown that would be wildly impractical for grocery shopping. But the message is clear. This perfume isn't just a smell, it's a personality upgrade. Turn the page again. Now it's hair products. A woman smiles confidently beneath a cascade of hair so voluminous it could probably provide shade for a small picnic. The caption promises body, lift, and movement, 3 words that suggest your current hairstyle might be lacking basic structural integrity. You study the photo carefully. Your own hair, sitting calmly on your head like a polite houseguest, suddenly feels underqualified. Magazines describe hair as something that should bounce, shine, flow, and possibly sparkle under the correct lighting conditions. Achieving this requires a delicate combination of shampoo, conditioner, mousse, styling gel, and hairspray strong enough to survive moderate earthquakes. But the advertisement makes it look effortless. The model flips her hair slightly. A breeze appears. Everything works perfectly. Then you turn another page. Clothing advertisements arrive next. A woman wearing a sharply tailored blazer walks down a city street with the kind of confidence usually reserved for people who just solved international diplomacy. The jacket fits perfectly. The lighting is perfect. The pavement somehow looks glamorous. You start wondering if owning this jacket might give you that same energy. Maybe not the international diplomacy part, but at least the confident walk. Advertising thrives on this quiet suggestion. It rarely says outright that a product will transform your life. Instead, it gently implies it. This lipstick doesn't just colour your lips, it enhances your presence. This shampoo doesn't just clean your hair, it unlocks your potential. This dress doesn't just clothe your body, it tells the world who you are. You begin noticing that advertisements rarely show ordinary situations. Nobody in these pages is stuck in traffic. Nobody is rushing to work with a coffee stain on their shirt. Nobody is trying to find their car keys while running late. Advertising lives in a universe where everyone is calm, beautiful, and standing near expensive furniture. And the strange thing is, it works. Not because people believe every advertisement literally, but because the images are powerful. Repeated exposure slowly shapes expectations. You begin associating certain looks with confidence, certain hairstyles with success, certain clothes with status. Over time, the advertisements blur together with the editorial content. A beauty tip appears beside a makeup ad. A fashion article sits across from a clothing spread. Advice and marketing become neighbours on the same glossy street. It becomes difficult to tell where inspiration ends and salesmanship begins, and that's the quiet genius of the magazine empire. Advertising doesn't shout, it whispers, it smiles, it places an image in your mind and lets your imagination do the rest. Soon enough, the magazines aren't just telling you what beauty looks like, they're also telling you what success looks like. And in the 1980s, success begins to look very stylish. Because next, fashion magazines will start connecting clothing not just to beauty, but to social status itself. Clothing brands quietly become social currency. Designer labels appear more prominently. Guess Jeans, Calvin Klein, Ralph Lauren. Magazines begin suggesting that what you wear is not just clothing. It's a public statement about your success, personality, and ability to keep up with trends that change roughly every 8 minutes. You flip through the fashion section, and something becomes clear very quickly. The clothes are no longer the only star of the page. The name on the clothes matters just as much. In earlier decades, people certainly cared about fashion, but the 1980s takes it a step further. Labels move from hidden tags inside collars to proud declarations on the outside. Logos grow bigger. Brand names appear in bold type across advertisements and editorials alike. Suddenly, clothing is not just about style, it's about identity. The magazine spreads show models leaning casually against sports cars, walking through Manhattan streets, or standing confidently in minimalist studios that look suspiciously like expensive art galleries. The outfits are sharp, tailored, unmistakably modern. And beside them, printed with elegant confidence, are the brand names: Guess, Calvin Klein, Ralph Lauren. These names begin to function almost like membership cards to a very fashionable club. If you wear them, the magazines suggest, people will understand something about you immediately. Not necessarily who you are as a person, but who you are aspiring to be. Let's talk about jeans for a moment. Jeans had been around for over a century by this point. Originally built for miners and labourers, denim was designed to survive rough work and long days outdoors. But by the 1980s, denim has undergone a remarkable transformation. Designer jeans appear, not just sturdy pants anymore, but carefully cut, strategically faded, and marketed with the intensity of luxury goods. Advertisements present them as sleek, desirable, even glamorous. Some ads feature models reclining confidently while wearing jeans that cost significantly more than the work pants they evolved from. And yet people buy them eagerly, because the jeans now carry meaning. They signal taste. They signal awareness of trends. They signal that you are participating in the cultural moment, not standing awkwardly outside of it wearing something practical and emotionally stable. Magazines help reinforce this idea. Articles explain how to build the perfect wardrobe. They discuss essential pieces: the power blazer, the slim-fit jeans, the crisp white shirt. Each item is presented not just as clothing, but as a strategic tool for navigating social life. Your outfit becomes a sentence. Your jacket says something. Your shoes say something. Even your watch is apparently involved in this conversation. You begin to realize that fashion in the 1980s is not just about looking good, it's about communicating status. Someone wearing a Ralph Lauren polo shirt might be subtly suggesting they enjoy a lifestyle involving polo fields, sailing trips, and brunch conversations about investment portfolios. Whether or not any of that is true is beside the point. Fashion thrives on suggestion, and suggestion is powerful. Magazines amplify this by showcasing entire wardrobes built around designer labels. Models are styled from head to toe in coordinated outfits that look effortless, but likely required a small team of stylists and several hours of careful planning. To the reader, however, it appears simple. Wear these clothes. Look this confident. Become this version of yourself. And because trends change quickly, sometimes season to season, keeping up becomes its own challenge. A jacket that felt cutting edge last year might suddenly appear outdated. Jeans that once looked bold now seem suspiciously ordinary. Fashion magazines keep the cycle moving. New silhouettes, new colours, new must-have items that promise to keep you stylishly ahead of everyone else. This constant motion keeps readers engaged. because staying fashionable begins to feel like staying relevant. And if clothing signals success, confidence, and belonging, then falling behind the trends might feel like losing a small social battle. Of course, behind this entire system sits a powerful machine. Designers creating collections, companies producing advertisements, magazines curating images, all working together to shape what the world thinks style should look like, and that machine is only getting bigger. Because behind the glamorous pages of fashion spreads and brand advertisements sits an entire corporate beauty industry, one that quietly benefits whenever readers feel just a little dissatisfied with themselves. Let's step behind the curtain and meet the machine. Behind every magazine issue sits a massive industry. Editors, advertisers, cosmetic companies, diet product manufacturers, fashion houses. All of them benefit when readers feel slightly dissatisfied with themselves. Just dissatisfied enough to buy one more product. You might imagine a fashion magazine as a simple editorial project, writers writing, photographers photographing, stylists styling. But behind the glossy pages lives something much larger, humming quietly like a very expensive refrigerator. A network of companies, partnerships, marketing departments, research labs, and executives in tall office buildings wearing expensive glasses that make them look decisive. This is not an accident. This is architecture. Magazines survive on advertising revenue. That means every lipstick ad, every perfume spread, every diet shake promotion is paying for the privilege of appearing beside helpful editorial content. And the relationship between content and advertising becomes wonderfully symbiotic. An article might advise you to try a new skincare routine. Turn the page. There's the exact product you suddenly feel you need. Coincidence? Absolutely not. Cosmetic companies love magazines because magazines speak directly to readers already in a self-improvement mindset. You don't pick up Vogue or Cosmopolitan because you're deeply satisfied with everything about your appearance and lifestyle. No, you're there for ideas, inspiration, small fixes, medium fixes, occasionally full-scale facial engineering, and these companies know it. Behind the scenes, entire teams debate packaging colours, buzzwords, and product names. Should the new moisturiser be called Radiant Lift, Age Miracle, Glowing Renewal? All three sound like spells from an enchanted skincare grimoire. Then there's the diet industry, diet shakes, appetite suppressants, low-calorie snack bars that taste like cardboard but promise a new you. These products thrive in environments where thinness is the prize and dieting is the game board. Magazines provide the perfect stage. Here's a diet plan telling you to cut calories. And right beside it, an ad for a low-calorie dessert substitute shaped like optimism. The fashion industry, of course, is in on the operation. Designers send samples to magazines months before collections launch. Editors select which pieces to feature, knowing their choices can drive sales in stores across the country. A blazer appearing in a major fashion spread can become the season's breakout star. Purchased not because it is practical or warm, or shaped like something a human should wear, but because it has been blessed by the glossy gods. And all of these industries, beauty, fashion, fitness, dieting, fragrance, interlock like a shimmering Rubik's Cube. Each one turns the reader's mild insecurity into fuel, not crushing insecurity, just enough insecurity. Enough to think, maybe I should try that moisturiser. Maybe those jeans will improve my life. Maybe this diet will finally work. Small doubts, small desires, small purchases, millions of them. Editors understand this dynamic better than anyone. They know how to present advice that feels empowering while subtly inviting the reader to want something more. Articles rarely say, "Fix yourself." Instead, they whisper, "Here's how to become your best self." A slight phrasing difference with enormous psychological impact, and advertisers love this. Because a reader who feels like a tiny adjustment, will get them closer to perfection is an advertiser's favourite type of customer. The magazine becomes a seamless loop. A beauty tip leads to a product leads to a desire leads to another tip. This cycle continues. Meanwhile, in corporate boardrooms, executives review charts and graphs showing exactly how well these messages are working, which ads increased sales, which beauty trends spiked product demand, which celebrity endorsements reshaped entire shopping habits. The machine is meticulous, efficient, highly profitable, and incredibly subtle. Most readers never think about the machinery behind the scenes. They simply flip through pages, absorbing imagery and language that quietly suggests they could be just a little bit better. And the machine doesn't need them to think otherwise. It just needs them to keep turning the page. Because the longer you stay in the glossy world, the more normal it feels. The more natural it seems that beauty is a project, style is a requirement, and self-improvement is a consumer experience. And as the machine grows, the imagery grows with it. Soon the magazines won't just shape beauty standards, they'll reshape reality itself, through the growing power of photo editing and airbrushing. Let's turn the page and watch perfection become literally manufactured. Photography techniques improve. Retouching becomes more sophisticated. Skin becomes smoother. Waistlines slimmer. Imperfections quietly erased before the image ever reaches the page. Readers are unknowingly comparing themselves to people who no longer exist even in real life. At first it's subtle. You're flipping through a magazine and you notice the models look perfect. Not just beautiful, perfect in a way that seems slightly outside the realm of human biology. Their skin is luminous, free of pores, blemishes, or the faint shadow of exhaustion that settles onto every mortal face by Thursday afternoon. Their bodies appear elongated, symmetrical, and suspiciously consistent across multiple pages. You assume it's good lighting, or maybe professional makeup, or maybe models are simply born from some special genetic lottery where no one gets acne, and everyone has cheekbones sharp enough to remove packaging tape. But behind the scenes, something revolutionary is happening. Airbrushing, a word that sounds harmless, almost whimsical, like someone gently blowing fresh paint onto a canvas while humming softly. But in the 1980s, airbrushing becomes a quiet superpower. A tool capable of shaping, smoothing, stretching, slimming, and doing it so seamlessly that no one outside the industry realizes what's happening. Photographers take the raw images, already meticulously styled, lit and posed, and hand them over to retouchers who treat them like blueprints for improvement. A slight shadow on the chin, gone. A wrinkle near the eye, softened. A small fold in the waist from a normal human body bending in a normal human way, erased entirely. Airbrushing becomes the final step in constructing the perfect woman, not photographed, manufactured. You continue reading, unaware that you're comparing yourself to someone who has been gently reassembled, pixel by pixel, using analog tools and artistic intuition. This is before Photoshop, no digital magic yet. Airbrushing is done by hand with paint, brushes, and careful precision. Retouchers sit under bright lamps, using tiny instruments to reshape thighs, sharpen jawlines, brighten eyes, and smooth skin, until the model looks like a cross between a sculpture and a celestial being. And the message you receive without ever hearing it aloud is simple. Why don't you look like this? Even though the better question would be, why doesn't she look like this? Because she doesn't. Not in the morning, not at night, not during the shoot, not ever. The magazine has birthed a separate version of her, an improved edition, the luxury model, and you, sitting on your couch with a snack that is definitely not grapefruit or cabbage soup, begin quietly grading yourself against an image that is no longer real. This creates a strange psychological effect. It's like trying to measure your height against a rainbow. You're fighting something that exists only because someone painted it into existence. But the illusion is powerful. In ads, fashion spreads, beauty tutorials, everywhere, the same perfected faces appear. And because they're everywhere, your brain starts treating them as normal. Real becomes imperfect. Airbrushed becomes expected. And the editors don't explain any of this. No warning label. No tiny caption reading. This image has been gently edited to remove reality. Instead, the magazine acts as if perfection is natural, effortless, accessible. If you buy the right foundation, if you use the right serum, if you try aerobics 3 times a week and eat nothing but citrus. The model's perfection is framed as a lifestyle, not a fabrication. Slowly, expectations shift. Women start using words like flawless and smooth and toned not as ideals but as obligations. High school girls stare at their own reflections, wondering why their faces have pores. Adult women glance at their waists and assume small softnesses are personal failings instead of basic anatomy. Airbrushing quietly rewrites the rules of comparison, and the magazines don't stop there. Because once you can alter faces and bodies on the page, something else happens. You start believing that perfection is the baseline, and anything less, anything human, feels like a deviation. But the decade is not done reshaping reality yet. As airbrushed fantasy fills magazine pages, another cultural shift begins unfolding in bathrooms, office hallways, and shopping mall mirrors around the country. Women start studying themselves the way magazines taught them to study models. And that's where the next chapter begins. Picture a typical office bathroom in 1987. Several women stand near the mirror, adjusting hair sprayed into architectural shapes, lipstick reapplied, blazers straightened. The pressure to look polished at work begins rising as women enter professional spaces in larger numbers. The bathroom hums with fluorescent lights and quiet urgency. You can hear the soft click-click of compacts snapping open, the faint aerosol hiss of someone reinforcing their bangs with enough hairspray to legally qualify as construction adhesive, and the steady heartbeat of heels on tile. This is not just a bathroom. This is a command center. Each woman stands before the mirror like a general preparing for battle, checking every detail of her armor, hair, makeup, blazer, posture. The office has become a stage, and appearance is part of the performance. A high-performance look communicates competence. A flawless presentation suggests control. And the magazines sitting in lunchrooms, purses, and desk drawers have made sure everyone knows the unofficial dress code. You take your place in front of the mirror, not because you're vain, because it feels required. The magazines didn't just shape beauty trends, they set workplace expectations. The power woman of the 1980s is sharp, stylish, and impeccably composed. She has sculpted cheekbones, a well-tailored suit, and hair large enough to have its own personality. You dab on lipstick, hoping it makes you look more confident, or at least less tired. You smooth your blazer awkwardly, wishing you had ironed it better. The woman beside you adjusts her pantyhose with practiced skill. Another blends her eyeshadow, recreating the smoky look a magazine tutorial insisted would help her command attention during presentations. The office bathroom becomes a place where insecurities gather quietly in the corners. Because everyone is performing the same internal checklist. Is my hair too flat? Is my makeup too subtle? Is my outfit professional enough? Will anyone notice I didn't reapply lipstick after lunch? Magazines have made appearances feel measurable, trackable, another part of productivity. You splash a little water on your hands and glance up. The mirror reflects not just you, but the whole shift happening in women's lives. More women enter corporate offices, law firms, advertising agencies, broadcasting rooms, places where they had long been discouraged or excluded. And with this change comes an unspoken expectation. If you're going to compete in male-dominated environments, you'd better look the part. Not too feminine, not too plain, not too bold, not too understated. A tightrope dressed as a wardrobe. Magazines feed into this narrative with special workplace fashion issues. Dress for success. Power dressing for the modern queer woman. How to look confident even when you're not. These articles never explicitly say that appearance affects promotions or colleague respect, but the implication is woven into every polished photo. A structured jacket signals authority. A silk blouse means competence. A perfectly applied lipstick shade silently declares, "I am put together. I belong here. Respect me accordingly." And women believe it. Not because they're gullible, but because the workplace often reinforces the message. Compliments come more frequently on appearance than on contributions. "You look nice today" echoes louder than "great work on that project." A polished exterior becomes a protective layer in environments where women are still proving their place. So the bathroom becomes a sanctuary, a place to armour up, a place to adjust the version of yourself you're expected to present to the world. You watch as one woman leans in close to the mirror, examining a tiny smudge beneath her eye. She wipes it gently and sighs, not dramatically, just quietly, like someone exhaling the weight of expectation. Another woman teases her bangs higher. Another reapplies lipstick with mechanical precision. Then each one steps back, smoothing jackets, straightening shoulders, practicing a smile that looks confident but not intimidating, friendly but not unserious. And one by one, they leave the bathroom transformed. Not into different people, but into the 1980s, office-approved edition of themselves. The mirror is the final gatekeeper before re-entering the corporate arena. And magazines, every glowing, glossy issue, have silently shaped what that reflection needs to be. But the wardrobe isn't the only tool women are encouraged to sharpen. Next comes the ultimate symbol of professional power in the 1980s, the power suit. Fashion magazines introduced the power suit, large shoulder pads, structured jackets, sharp silhouettes, clothing designed to help women appear authoritative in workplaces historically dominated by men. It is fashion mixed with strategy. You turn the page and suddenly the magazine transforms into a field manual for entering battle. Corporate battle, that is. The power suit is presented not as an outfit but as equipment, essential, tactical, a wearable proclamation, "I deserve to be here." The suit of the 1980s is not subtle. It arrives with geometry, with angles, with shoulder pads large enough to host a small cocktail party. These are not shoulders meant to shrug politely. These are shoulders meant to announce your presence when you enter a boardroom, and the magazines adore them. Editorial spreads show women in skyscraper-like suits standing in front of actual skyscrapers. The message is unmistakable. If you want to climb the corporate ladder, you should begin by looking like the ladder itself. Tall, structured, and slightly intimidating. You study the photos carefully. The suits have nipped waists but broad frames, creating silhouettes that suggest confidence and competence. The colours are rich: navy, charcoal, deep burgundy. These are hues selected not for whimsy, but for gravitas. No pastel pinks here, unless, of course, they're paired with shoulder pads capable of lifting small appliances. Magazines explain that power dressing isn't just about clothes, it's about non-verbal communication. A structured blazer tells colleagues you're serious. A crisp white blouse says you're polished. A pencil skirt implies you're aerodynamic and efficient, and heels, always heels, announce that you have arrived even before you speak. What the magazines rarely mention is that many women wearing these suits are juggling more than image. Career expectations, workplace biases, outdated assumptions, and the new pressure to not just work hard, but look powerful doing it. You try on your first power suit. It feels stiff at first, like wearing a very stylish exoskeleton. The shoulder pads elevate you, literally and metaphorically. You catch your reflection in the mirror and notice something unexpected. You stand a little straighter. Your chin lifts slightly. You look more decisive. But beneath this newfound posture is a quiet truth. You're dressing for credibility in a system designed without you in mind. And the magazines know this. They frame the power suit as liberation, fashion granting access to rooms once closed off. Headlines proclaim things like, dress for the job you want, project confidence with structured silhouettes, clothing that helps you command any room. These aren't just styling tips, they're survival strategies. Because in many offices of the 1980s, femininity is still viewed as softness, and softness is still viewed as weakness. So the suit becomes armour, fabric replacing steel, fashion replacing force. Many women find empowerment in this transformation. The power suit becomes a badge of belonging, a signal that the old definitions of professional are crumbling, that ambition isn't a flaw, that women can lead, direct, innovate, manage, while looking absolutely iconic. But others feel conflicted. The power suit brings authority, yes, but also pressure. Pressure to fit a mould shaped not by women, but by a business culture that expects femininity to be carefully controlled and tightly tailored. Still, the suits flourish. Workplaces fill with women walking confidently through hallways, their heels echoing against polished floors, their jackets cutting sleek lines through the office landscape. They're rewriting history one spreadsheet at a time, draped in wool-blend armour, and the magazines keep pushing the look. They offer endless variations, double-breasted suits, pinstripes, wide-legged trousers, matching skirt sets. They teach readers how to accessorise without appearing frivolous, how to choose colours that convey competence, how to strike the balance between stylish and authoritative. In every photo, every article, every styling guide, the message rings loud and clear. If the workplace won't adjust to you, adjust your wardrobe until the workplace has no choice but to take you seriously. Power dressing becomes a cultural movement, one that encourages women to claim space, take charge, and visually assert the authority they've had all along. And as these suits stride confidently into offices around the country, a new force steps onto the scene, one that amplifies the same beauty ideals, but through an even brighter, even more influential lens: Hollywood. Movies and television amplify the same standards. Stars appear on magazine covers reinforcing the ideal: glamorous, thin, stylish. Celebrities become living advertisements for the beauty standards the magazines are selling. Hollywood has always influenced fashion, but in the 1980s it becomes the loudspeaker for the glossy perfection the magazines promote. The relationship is symbiotic. Magazines need stars to sell issues, and stars need magazines to maintain their glow of untouchable glamour. Suddenly, every newsstand becomes a miniature shrine to Hollywood beauty, pumping out images of actresses and pop icons whose hair alone seems to have its own publicist. You walk past a magazine rack and see familiar faces staring back. Brooke Shields, Michelle Pfeiffer, Madonna. Farrah Fawcett reruns keeping the feathered hair dream alive. Their images become cultural currency. Magazines plaster them across covers wearing dazzling gowns, sculpted makeup, and more often than not body proportions you've only ever seen on gazelles or mannequins carved by slightly over-enthusiastic artists. These women are talented, of course, actors, singers, dancers, but the magazines rarely discuss the talent. Instead, they focus on beauty, skin tone, waistline, hairstyles, workout routines, secrets that not secrets at all, but carefully orchestrated wellness regimens supported by fitness trainers, stylists, dermatologists, and teams of assistants stealthily removing any trace of reality. You open an issue of Cosmopolitan or Vogue, and a feature story promises How to get Madonna's arms or Brooke Shields' beauty routine revealed. Sometimes the articles are so breathlessly excited you half expect them to conclude with a treasure map. Hollywood's influence creeps everywhere. Television shows present glamorous women who wake up with flawless blowouts, wear couture clothing to brunch, and miraculously avoid sweat, wrinkles, or any evidence of normal biological function. Even sitcom mums appear suspiciously radiant for people raising 3 children, working full-time and cooking dinner in full makeup and voluminous hair. Then comes music television, MTV, exploding onto the scene and permanently altering beauty culture. Music videos introduce a new visual language, fast edits, dramatic lighting, sculpted faces, and bodies choreographed with laser precision. Suddenly, every teenage girl wants to look like the star of her favourite video, wildly glamorous while casually leaning against a sports car. This shapes expectations more than magazines alone ever could. Because now beauty standards move. They dance, they pout, they sing into microphones with breezy confidence while wearing outfits made of leather, lace, or whatever fabric was left after the shoulder pads were cut. Hollywood beauty becomes kinetic. And because it's kinetic, it feels more real. You watch these stars in motion and think, well, if she looks like that while moving, maybe that's normal, maybe that's achievable. But behind the scenes, hours of makeup, strict diets, professional trainers, lighting setups designed to erase shadows and create illusions, editing teams smoothing every frame until the final result appears effortless. None of that appears in the magazine or on the screen. What appears is the myth, and the myth is powerful. It spreads into teenage bedrooms as posters on walls. It follows women into malls where clothing racks carry celebrity-endorsed fashion lines. It even invades workplaces as people show up with hair teased as high as the moon, hoping some of that Hollywood confidence might transfer through osmosis. Hollywood also reinforces the emerging obsession with thinness. Actresses are praised for being sleek and toned, euphemisms that politely mean extremely small. Magazine interviews gush about how a celebrity stays fit with a disciplined routine, a phrase that glosses over the reality of intense training schedules and the pressure to maintain an appearance under constant scrutiny. And Hollywood men? They remain mostly unchanged throughout the decade. Some muscles here, some charm there, but nothing compared to the standards placed on women. No one demands the action movie heroes of perfectly blended contour or hair that remains motionless during explosions. Meanwhile, women in Hollywood must achieve flawlessness in every frame, and millions of readers, flipping through magazines, begin absorbing that expectation without realizing it. By the late 80s, something has shifted everywhere, from living rooms to locker rooms to office bathrooms. Beauty is becoming a full-time performance, and Hollywood is the headlining act. And now, with celebrities modelling impossible ideals, the magazines begin offering a new tool, a structured conversational guide that blends entertainment with self-surveillance, the advice column, where beauty becomes instruction, where insecurity becomes engagement, where questions you didn't even know you had are answered with tips you never ask for. And that's where we're headed next. Advice sections promise solutions to every possible insecurity. How to slim your thighs, how to hide dark circles, how to look younger, fresher, thinner, happier, more confident, and mysteriously radiant before your next social gathering. You settle into a chair, flip open the magazine, and land on the section that feels less like a casual read and more like a diagnosis centre for your self-esteem. Advice columns line the pages like a team of overly enthusiastic consultants who've identified all your flaws, some you didn't even know you possessed, and come prepared with strategies, charts, and diagrams to help fix them immediately. Titles read like urgent memos from headquarters. 5 tricks to slim your thighs, fast, erase dark circles in minutes, Look younger by Friday. Yes, really. Secrets to being irresistibly confident. Each headline gently implies you're currently none of these things. The tone is upbeat, friendly, and just a little condescending, like a cheerful co-worker who compliments your outfit, while also suggesting 5 ways it could be improved. The advice column writers, whose real job appears to be giving women brand new insecurities on a monthly schedule, lay out step-by-step instructions for transforming yourself into someone who looks marginally more like the Airbrushed model 2 pages earlier. Let's take a moment to examine the structure of these articles. It always begins with a problem. Your thighs, your skin, your under-eye area, your posture, your eyebrows, which apparently should be treated as architectural features requiring constant structural support. Some articles highlight flaws you didn't know were flaws until that very moment. Is your face looking tired? You weren't tired until they said it. Now suddenly your entire reflection looks exhausted. Then comes reassurance. Don't worry! We can fix this! The use of we is generous, considering the writer will not be present for any part of the suggested solution, which often requires purchasing 3 new products, rearranging your morning routine, and possibly performing light contortion in front of a mirror. Solutions always promise speed. In minutes, in days, in one simple step. By the weekend, before your next date. There is no long-term strategy here, only rapid repairs, emergency beauty triage. Just when you think the advice might be free, the writer casually mentions a serum recommended by experts, or a concealer that readers swear by, or a thigh-toning tool that changed one woman's life. And would you look at that, there's an ad for that exact product on the very next page. In the 1980s, editorial advice and marketing worked together with the precision of synchronized swimmers. You can practically hear the champagne glasses clinking in distant corporate offices each time a reader makes it to step 3. Every column ends with a little scenario where the new, improved you emerges triumphantly. Walk into a party with glowing skin everyone will notice. Feel confident during that important meeting. Turn heads on your next date night. These tiny fantasies operate like movie trailers for your potential life, edited, perfected, scored, with soft orchestral music. They're irresistible. That's the point. And then the next column begins. Another insecurity. Another fix. Another promise of transformation. Soon, flipping through the magazine feels like going through a personalized audit. Are your lips full enough? Are your eyelashes long enough? Is your skin bright enough? Is your hair voluminous enough to be seen from space? There are columns for romance too. Why he hasn't called. How to keep his attention. Mistakes women make without knowing it. These pieces subtly suggest that even your relationships can be optimized, tuned up like a car engine, if you just adjust your personality according to 7 bullet points and a helpful diagram labeled what men really want. Teenage girls read these, new mothers read these, working women read these, and all of them absorb the same gentle message. There is always something to fix. The advice never ends because the insecurities never end, and the insecurities never end because the advice never ends. It's a loop built not out of malice, but out of business, a very successful business. And as readers continue flipping through pages filled with suggestions for improvement, something subtle shifts inside them. Comparison, quiet, constant, creeping. Which leads us directly into the next chapter of this glossy saga. How the comparison trap tightens its grip and reshapes the way millions of women see themselves. Over time, something subtle happens. Women begin comparing themselves not only to celebrities, but to the perfected images inside the magazines. The comparison becomes constant, quiet, often unconscious. It begins innocently enough. You're flipping through a magazine at the dentist's office, waiting for your name to be called, and you pause on a fashion spread. A woman leans gracefully against a window, wearing a silk blouse that flows like it was designed by angels with sewing machines. Her makeup is soft but flawless. Her stomach is impossibly flat for someone who appears to be casually breathing. You don't think, I want to look like her. Not yet. You just think, and then you turn the page, but the seed is planted. Later you see a makeup ad on the back of a bus bench, then a perfume commercial on TV, then a poster in a mall, then another magazine cover at the grocery checkout line, smiling at you like an old friend who has her life completely together. Slowly the images accumulate, and without realizing it, you start to hold them up beside your own reflection. Just tiny comparisons at first, barely noticeable, like faint radio static in the background of your mind. But the static grows louder. You notice your hair doesn't behave like the model's hair. You notice your waist doesn't taper quite like the blueprint from page 12. You notice your skin has texture, actual human texture, which the magazines treat as a technical malfunction. You're not actively judging yourself. You're just observing the differences between real life and glossy life. And the glossy life wins every time, because those images have been polished, styled, airbrushed, lit with precision, and curated by entire teams whose job is to make perfection look effortless. They represent a fantasy world where pores are forbidden, thighs do not touch, and everyone wakes up looking ready for a movie premiere. Your brain begins keeping score without your permission. Your reflection becomes less of a familiar friend and more of an ongoing project, something to analyze, adjust, modify. The mirror becomes a small battlefield where you wage quiet wars with stray hairs, under-eye circles, soft stomachs, and whatever else a magazine recently told you counts as an area for improvement. No one announces this shift out loud. It just happens. The comparison trap deepens when you start comparing yourself not just to the models, but to other women around you. Women in your school, your workplace, your neighbourhood, or worse, the versions of them projected through fashion, advertising, and media. You see a coworker with perfect hair and think, how does she look so put together every morning? You see a woman jogging and wonder, should I be doing that? You walk into a party and instantly start scanning outfits, faces, hair, measuring yourself on a scale you never consciously agreed to use. And these comparisons don't shout, they whisper. Tiny internal nudges. She's thinner than you, her skin looks smoother. Her outfit is more stylish. She looks like she belongs in a magazine spread. Do you? None of this is rational. None of this is your fault. It's cultural conditioning doing exactly what decades of glossy pages taught it to do. Magazines of the 1980s don't just present beauty, they rank it. There's the best-dressed list, the style stars, the summer makeover success stories. Everything becomes a hierarchy, and you begin sorting yourself, voluntarily, quietly, into the lower tiers. And the most dangerous part? You don't even realize you're doing it. Comparison becomes a habit, a reflex, a mental muscle that grows stronger with use. And the more you compare, the more inadequate you feel. The magazines are never satisfied with you, not entirely, and neither eventually are you. Even when you look good, you believe you could look better. Even when someone compliments you, you wonder why the mirror didn't say it first. Beauty becomes a moving target. You hit the mark one day, miss it the next, and chase it again because the magazine insists improvement is always possible, and therefore always necessary. The comparison trap steals something subtle but precious. Your ability to simply exist without evaluating yourself. Your reflection becomes a report card. Your body becomes a scoreboard. Your face becomes a to-do list. And maintaining this silent, exhausting system becomes part of daily life. But the trap doesn't start and end with comparison. Oh no, Because once you've internalized this constant ranking, this quiet measuring of yourself against impossible standards, you begin to feel something else creeping in. Pressure. Pressure to fix things. Pressure to improve. Pressure to work harder on a body that was never wrong in the first place. And that pressure, it will shape the next decade of body image entirely. But before that happens, the magazines still have more weight to place on your shoulders and more beauty standards to enforce. Because the comparison trap once set leads directly to its more painful counterpart, body anxiety. By the late 1980s, researchers begin noticing a trend. More women reporting dissatisfaction with their bodies, more dieting, more anxiety about weight and appearance. The glossy images have slowly reshaped expectations. What began as a gentle stream of comparisons, quiet, manageable, almost invisible, swells into a rising tide of body anxiety. And it doesn't crash all at once. It seeps, it drips, it settles in gradually, the way fog rolls into a town until one morning you look around and realize you can barely see the street in front of you. Women wake up and begin scanning their bodies automatically, like checking email, except the inbox contains only judgment. A new ritual emerges. You stand in front of the mirror not to admire yourself, but to evaluate. You pinch, you prod, you adjust your clothing, you tilt your head and wonder whether your jawline should be sharper, your arms slimmer, your stomach flatter. This is no longer simply comparison. This is assessment. And the assessment rarely ends with kindness. Researchers at universities start publishing early studies. The data is startling. Women of all ages report feeling more dissatisfied with their bodies than their mothers or grandmothers did. Girls as young as 12 describe wanting to lose weight. Women in their 30s and 40s confess to feeling not good enough physically, even when they're in perfectly normal, healthy bodies. Something clearly has shifted, and the shift didn't come from biology. It came from the glossy, relentless world of visual perfection the 1980s built brick by brick, ad by ad, article by article, photo shoot by photo shoot. The anxiety manifests differently for each woman. Some start dieting constantly, bouncing from grapefruit diets to juice cleanses to low-fat everything. Others obsessively track calories, exercise more, or avoid social events where they might be judged. Some feel a persistent sense of failure, as if beauty is a class they keep studying for but can't pass. And many simply carry the anxiety quietly, tucked beneath work clothes and polite smiles, feeling it press against them like an invisible backpack filled with cultural expectations. A backpack they never asked to carry. Magazines aren't solely to blame, but they serve as accelerators. Their messaging is subtle but powerful. You should look a certain way. You can look that way if you try. If you don't look that way, it's because you're not trying hard enough. This trifecta creates the perfect ecosystem for anxiety. Even when someone looks fine, they feel wrong. Even when someone feels healthy, they feel insufficient. Even when someone receives compliments, they don't quite believe them. Because the foundation of body anxiety is not reality, it's expectation. And in the 1980s, expectation becomes more rigid, more absolute, more universal than ever before. Television adds fuel to the fire. Commercials show women with impossibly toned bodies jogging through sunlit parks. Sitcom actresses appear flawless even in casual scenes. Movie stars glow on screen in ways that suggest the absence of pores, sweat glands, and stress. Meanwhile, everyday women are juggling jobs, raising kids, commuting in traffic, trying to pay bills, cleaning households, managing relationships, and navigating the complexities of adult life. And somehow, in the midst of all that, they're expected to achieve the physique of a professional dancer and the complexion of a porcelain doll. Workplaces add another layer. Co-workers discuss diets in break rooms. Someone compliments a colleague for losing weight, reinforcing the idea that smaller equals better. Someone else makes an offhand comment about needing to get back on track, implying that beauty is a project that requires constant renovation. Gyms respond to the anxiety by selling memberships aggressively. Beauty brands respond by promising radiant skin in 7 days. Diet companies respond by inventing new meal replacements and calling them revolutionary. Everyone profits from women feeling slightly uncomfortable with themselves. And then there are the teen girls, the ones absorbing all of this without fully understanding what it's doing to them. They circle problem areas in magazines using pink gel pens. They compare their bodies to models who are adults. Or worse, adults who have been airbrushed into cartoons. Some stop eating dessert. Some skip lunch quietly. Some begin associating hunger with virtue. The cycle spreads. By the end of the decade, body anxiety isn't an occasional issue, it's a cultural phenomenon. A nearly universal experience among women who've been told for 10 straight years that their worth is tightly intertwined with the way they look. But the anxiety doesn't appear in isolation. It grows within a specific environment, one that flourishes most fully in the new cultural epicenter of the 1980s. The mall, where fashion and mirrors collide, where the glossy ideals become physical clothing, and where body anxiety meets its most powerful reinforcer, retail dressing rooms. Welcome to mall culture. Shopping malls become the physical extension of the magazine world. Store windows display the same trends featured in print. Fashion media and retail form a feedback loop of aspiration and consumption. Picture it. The automatic doors whoosh open. A gust of artificially chilled air greets you like a glamorous handshake, and suddenly you're standing inside a cathedral of consumerism. It's the late 1980s, and the American mall isn't just a place to buy things, it's where culture happens. It's where you go to socialize, escape, reinvent yourself, and, crucially, compare yourself to every glossy ideal the magazines have been feeding you. The mall is the magazine, but in 3D, storefronts line the walkways like physical magazine covers, each window carefully curated, each mannequin styled with the precision of a fashion editorial. Everything gleams, everything glows, everything whispers, this is who you could be if you owned this outfit. You walk past the Limited, Express, Benetton, Esprit, Guess, and, if your mall is fancy enough, a shiny new department store with escalators that feel like portals to a richer dimension. These stores aren't just selling clothing. They're selling membership into the world the magazines created. You enter one of them. Inside, the lighting is flattering-ish. The mirrors are angled in ways that could either boost your confidence or ruin your entire day. Employees dressed in trend-approved ensembles greet you with energetic enthusiasm, offering help before you even have time to figure out whether you want help. You browse the racks. Here it all is. Every trend you've been reading about. The power blazers, the stonewashed denim, the neon aerobics-inspired tops, the tailored suits that practically shout corporate dominance. The sweaters with geometric shapes that definitely mean something profound about the decade's optimism. Retail and fashion magazines now operate in sync. When a trend appears in print, you find it on display the next time you visit the mall. When the mall showcases a new look, the next round of magazines validates it with spreads and styling guides. It's a mutually reinforcing loop of desire. See it, want it, buy it, see more of it, want again. It is the fashion Ouroboros, the snake that stylishly consumes its own tail. You pick up a garment and hold it against yourself in a mirror. Instantly, a quiet calculation begins in your mind. Does this make me look like the girls in the magazine? Am I pulling off the vibe? Do I look confident enough, thin enough, trend-aware enough? This is where body anxiety meets fluorescent lighting. Dressing rooms become tiny psychological chambers where you confront the glossy ideals head-on. The room is too small, the lighting too harsh, the mirrors too honest. You turn, shift, tug, smooth, evaluate. You wonder if the outfit looks wrong or if you look wrong. The magazines trained you for this moment without your knowledge. Meanwhile, outside the changing room, the mall hums. Groups of teenagers roam in packs, armed with pretzels and Pepsi cups. They wander through stores, testing identities like costumes. Some try on studded jackets and instantly believe they're edgier. Some slip into slouchy sweaters and decide they're artistic now. The mall is a giant personality buffet, but the mall is also a social arena. You see people your age everywhere, your classmates, your co-workers, your neighbours, and every single one of them is dressed in the same trend cycle, being fed by the same magazines you read at home, which means something important. Everyone is comparing themselves. You compare your outfit to hers. She compares her hair to yours. Two girls whisper about a mannequin's waistline as if it were a living being. No one says it out loud, but the mall becomes a living gallery of silent mutual evaluation. And the stores know this. They organise displays so you see the full outfit. Shirt, pants, belt, earrings, shoes. The message is clear. Don't just buy a single item. Buy the identity. Magazines encourage the same thinking. Must have pieces of the season. How to build the perfect full wardrobe. 10 essentials every stylish woman owns. Owning the right items becomes a marker of success, fitting in, keeping up. And the mall translates these messages into bright signage and clearance racks that promise affordability, but only after convincing you to crave something full price first. Outside in the food court, you sit with your shopping bags and sip a soda. You look around and realise that the mall is more than a marketplace. It's the physical meeting place of aspiration and insecurity. It is where Americans go to try on their next version of themselves. You're surrounded by advertisements come to life. People wearing the decade's most popular trends, some confidently, some anxiously. It's hard not to measure yourself against them. Harder still when you know exactly what the magazines would say about you if they could see you now. But the mall has a larger purpose. It's not just a place to buy, it's a place to watch, compare, imitate, desire. And in doing so, it cements the idea that beauty and identity are things you can purchase. Next, the magazines will take that idea one step further, shifting from selling clothing to selling you a fundamental belief about your identity. That beauty isn't just what you wear, it is who you are. For many women, appearance becomes tied to self-worth. Not intentionally, not maliciously, but steadily reinforced by years of messaging that equates attractiveness with success, confidence, and happiness. It doesn't happen overnight. No single magazine cover declares your entire identity is now your appearance. Good luck. But after a decade of subtle nudges, glossy spreads, advice columns, celebrity worship, and retail reinforcement, something inside the culture quietly recalibrates. Beauty stops being something you have. It becomes something you are. And in the 1980s, that shift feels almost seamless. Magazines emphasize looking good not as a pastime or hobby, but as an essential foundation for everything else in life. A promotion, look polished, a relationship, be attractive, confidence, start with grooming, happiness, begin with self-improvement, preferably performed with products sold in the adjoining advertisements. You wake up in the morning and before your brain even fully boots up, you're already taking inventory. How does my skin look today? Is my hair behaving? Do I look rested? Do I look young? Do I look thin? Real questions about your well-being, your goals, your interests, your relationships, your feelings get pushed quietly to the background. Beauty becomes the first job of the day, and for many women, the most exhausting. Because beauty in the 1980s isn't passive. It demands labour, time, money, emotional energy. It requires watching what you eat, how you move, what you wear, how you age, how you photograph. It requires vigilance. You're not just getting ready, you're maintaining your identity. The magazines reinforce this with language that blends aesthetic ideals with moral ones. Words like fresh, vibrant, youthful, radiant, healthy, all positive words, all framed as visual qualities. If you don't match those visuals, you don't just feel unattractive, you feel less than, as if something essential is out of place. Fashion publications start presenting beauty not just as an attribute, but as an achievement, a prize, a lifestyle, a signal of effort and discipline. If you are thin, you are dedicated. If your skin is perfect, you are responsible. If you dress stylishly, you are successful. If you look flawless, you must have your life together. And if you don't, well, maybe you should be working harder. Appearance and identity fuse quietly, like two liquids mixing in a jar until you can no longer separate them. You begin to feel that how you look is a reflection of who you are. A messy bun, you're failing, wrinkled blazer, you're unprofessional, visible pores, you're neglecting yourself, a little weight gain, you're letting things slip. The magazines never say this outright. They don't have to. The implication is baked into every before and after, every makeover success, every 10 tips to transform your life article. Beauty becomes a measurement of worth because it is always presented as a choice, one you are responsible for making correctly. And the culture participates. Friends compliment each other's weight loss more than their accomplishments. Co-workers note when someone looks tired, meaning, fix your face. Teenagers internalize the idea that attractiveness equals popularity. Women of all ages feel a hum of background guilt if they don't meet the beauty standard du jour. This is where identity merges with obligation. Because beauty isn't optional anymore. It's expected. It's required. And once beauty becomes identity, losing beauty, aging, gaining weight, experiencing stress, developing wrinkles, can feel like losing pieces of yourself. Women describe feeling invisible when they age, irrelevant when they don't meet beauty standards, ashamed when their bodies change due to life circumstances completely beyond their control. This isn't vanity. It's conditioning working exactly as designed. The magazines didn't set out to create this cultural shift maliciously. They followed trends, reflected aspirations, and sold products. But the cumulative effect is powerful. Millions of women slowly learn to evaluate their worth, the way magazines evaluate their models visually, critically, and often unfairly. And once beauty becomes synonymous with identity, another consequence emerges: fear. Fear of aging, fear of gaining weight, fear of being judged, fear of being seen without makeup, fear of not being enough. Fear becomes a quiet companion to daily life, and fear, mixed with aspiration, insecurity, and consumerism, creates the perfect environment for the next stage of the beauty industry to thrive: anti-aging culture, where staying youthful becomes the next battleground, where magazines begin whispering that time itself is an enemy, and where beauty becomes not just an identity but a fight. Not everyone accepted the narrative quietly. Some writers, journalists, and early activists begin questioning the beauty standards dominating media. Articles start appearing that challenge unrealistic expectations. In the late 1980s, a shift begins, small at first, but unmistakable. A handful of women, armed with pens, microphones, and a growing sense of cultural exhaustion, decide that enough is enough. They start pointing out what everyone else has been feeling but hasn't yet named. Something about this whole beauty system feels off. You see it first in the opinion columns. A writer slips in a line questioning why every magazine cover features the same body shape. Another suggests society might want to diversify what it calls beautiful. Someone else gently wonders why female characters on TV are flawless at all times, even while fighting crime, giving birth, or waking up at 3 a.m. to investigate mysterious noises. These women don't shout. They observe. They poke at the glossy wall with curiosity. They ask dangerous questions like, why is thin the default? Why should beauty be required? Why are women expected to look perfect at work, but men can roll in with unbrushed hair and unmatched socks? And the more they ask, the more people start listening. Academic researchers begin publishing studies linking media imagery to body dissatisfaction. Psychologists raise concerns about the impact of dieting culture on self-esteem. Feminist thinkers write about the male gaze, about image manipulation, about how visual culture shapes identity. Then come the books with titles like The Beauty Myth and Female Chauvinist Pigs, works that peel back the curtain and reveal the machinery behind the beauty industry. These books begin circulating in college classrooms, women's groups, and living rooms across the country. They ignite conversations that are uncomfortable, necessary, and long overdue. And slowly, a counterculture grows. Young women read these critiques and feel something spark inside them. Recognition. Older women read them and think, finally someone said it out loud. Even teenagers flipping through the pages of 17 or YM begin noticing moments where the messaging doesn't quite add up. Because once you see the illusion, you can never fully unsee it. Magazines respond in small ways. They publish occasional editorials exploring inner beauty. They include interviews with actresses who talk about struggling with body image. They add short features about confidence, self-worth, and authenticity. These features are often tucked between ads for calorie-cutting yogurt and wrinkle creams, but they exist, and their existence matters. Some editors begin pushing for more realistic images. They advocate for featuring diverse body types, though the industry is slow to change. Others fight to spotlight accomplished women, scientists, athletes, activists, not just models and actresses. In classrooms, teachers start showing ads and asking students to question them. In living rooms, mothers begin telling their daughters, you don't need to look like the girls in these magazines. In bookstores, readers pick up feminist books and experience tiny earthquakes in their worldview. Then something bigger happens. Women begin talking to each other about dieting, about body pressure, about the fear of aging, about the exhaustion of constant comparison, about how strange it is that everyone feels this way but no one says it out loud. Support groups form, workshops appear, community classes discuss media literacy. The conversation gains momentum, and wherever there is momentum, there is change. Not fast change, not sweeping change. But cracks appear in the glossy surface. Women begin seeing beauty culture for what it is. A system someone built. A system someone profits from. A system that can be questioned, resisted, reimagined. A quiet rebellion takes shape. Some women stop dieting. Some toss out fashion magazines. Some wear clothes purely for comfort, an act that feels surprisingly radical. Some cut their hair short because they want to, not because it flatters the jawline. Some gather in circles and talk about what it would mean to feel at home in their bodies. Workplaces begin hearing whispers of change. Young professionals push back on the idea that beauty is part of job performance. Activists challenge sexist dress codes. Employees question why women's appearance is judged more harshly than men's. And while the beauty industry doesn't crumble, it's far too profitable for that. A new cultural awareness emerges. A sense that maybe, just maybe, women deserve more than endless correction. More than relentless improvement. More than a life spent chasing someone else's fantasy. By the end of the decade, the pushback has carved out room for a new conversation, one about authenticity, mental health, and the possibility of living without constant self-surveillance. The magazines don't disappear. The ads don't stop. The pressure doesn't evaporate. But now, for the first time, women are looking back at the glossy pages and saying, I see what you're doing, and I don't know if I'm buying it anymore. And that doubt, the tiniest crack in the glossy armour, will become the foundation for the next era. But first, we need to look at the women whose voices helped redefine beauty culture permanently. The ones who refused to be edited into silence. Behind the glamorous photos lie long hours, intense pressure, and strict body requirements imposed on models themselves. Even the women on the covers struggle to maintain the standards they represent. It's one of the great ironies of the 1980s beauty era. The women the public compares themselves to, the ones plastered across every magazine cover, glowing like celestial beings, are themselves barely holding it together behind the scenes. The imagery feels effortless, serene, aspirational, but the reality is a daily grind built on discipline, stress and scrutiny intense enough to make Olympians nervous. Start with the schedule. Modelling isn't just posing for photos, it's waking up at 4:30 a.m. to get to a shoot before sunrise. It's hours, sometimes full days, spent under hot lights while photographers bark instructions like elongate your neck and try to look relaxed but less relaxed. It's carrying heavy bags, sprinting to castings, waiting endlessly in cramped hallways with dozens of women who all seem taller, thinner, and more symmetrical than you feel on any given Tuesday. Then there's the body maintenance. The standards set for models didn't just magically appear the moment magazines printed them. They were industry rules, unwritten but enforced with alarming consistency. Agents would pull models aside and say things like, you need to lose 2 inches by next month. Keep tone, but don't look muscular. You're retaining water. Fix it. Fix it meaning diet harder. Hydrate differently. Avoid certain foods. Attend castings even if you feel faint. Do whatever it takes. And the women did. Because not meeting these standards didn't mean a stern talking to. It meant losing work, losing income, losing your spot in the industry altogether. Some models developed eating disorders. Some grew obsessed with calorie tracking. Some relied on cigarettes and coffee to get through long days without fainting. Some spent their nights in hotel rooms crying because their bodies refused to obey the exact proportions demanded of them. You'd think the finished images after all this labour might finally be accurate representations of their effort. But airbrushing changed everything. The camera captured reality. The editors erased it. Stretch marks, gone. Dark circles, gone. A ribcage shadow that made the pose look awkward, altered. Waist not quite small enough, narrowed. So the models ended up competing not with other women, but with their own retouched selves. Imagine going to the grocery store and seeing your face on a magazine cover, immortalized as a flawless version of you that you've never actually been. Imagine knowing millions will compare themselves to a fantasy that you yourself can't live up to. The psychological toll was enormous. Many models internalized the same insecurities as the readers. They believed they weren't thin enough, beautiful enough, perfect enough, even though they were the ones setting the cultural benchmark. Before big shoots, some starved themselves for days. Before runway shows, some collapsed backstage. Before major campaigns, some endured treatments that made them miserable, exhausted, or ill. And the industry rarely spoke about it. Interviews presented models as superhumans who ate clean, exercised moderately, and maintained perfection without stress. The magazines reinforced this myth, claiming beauty was a matter of discipline and routine, not genetics, not airbrushing, not extreme pressure, not suffering. Readers didn't know the truth. They didn't know that some models cried after seeing their own photos because the edited version felt like a stranger. They didn't know that many struggled silently with anxiety, loneliness, or self-worth. They didn't know that these women walking runways in million-dollar dresses often earned modest pay, unstable income, and carried the constant fear of being replaced. When the glossy pages arrived in homes across America, they carried not just an image, but a hidden story of sacrifice. A story that never made it into the captions. A story intentionally left outside the frame. And as the public absorbed the idea of perfection, the women creating the imagery were quietly breaking under the very same standards. This is the cost the magazines never printed. The labour nobody acknowledged. The truth nobody wanted to disrupt. Because perfection, once sold, becomes too profitable to question. But a reckoning is coming. As the decade closes, as more women speak up, and as cracks begin to appear in the beauty facade, the culture starts asking a dangerous question. If even the perfect women aren't perfect, what has all this been for? By the time the decade ends, the beauty industry has grown into a global powerhouse. The magazine culture of the 1980s leaves behind a lasting influence on fashion, media, and body image discussions that continue decades later. If the 1980s were a movie, the final montage would show glossy magazine pages flipping in slow motion while synth pop plays softly in the background, shoulder pads shrinking slightly, aerobics classes fading into yoga studios, frosted lipstick slowly transitioning into the matte 1990s palette. But the real legacy isn't in the trends themselves, it's in how the decade rewired culture. Because by 1989, something monumental has happened. Beauty has become an industry so large, so profitable, and so culturally central that it no longer feels like an industry at all. It feels like reality. The beauty boom reshapes more than closets and makeup bags. It reshapes expectations, aspirations, identities. It reshapes how women view themselves and how society views women. And that reshaping continues long after the decade's last bottle of hairspray finally releases its final, heroic puff. The 1980s create a mass distribution system for beauty ideals. Before, you only compared yourself to the women around you, neighbours, classmates, co-workers. Suddenly you're comparing yourself to supermodels, celebrities' heavily edited photographs, and airbrushed fantasy versions of all of the above. And those comparisons seep into the 1990s, 2000s, and beyond. Each decade refines the template, but the template itself, the expectation of near-flawless beauty, is pure 1980s DNA. Even when people try to rebel against it, the standard still hovers in the background like a quiet software program running on every cultural device. The decade introduces vocabulary that becomes permanent. Problem areas, anti-aging, slimming, toning, flattering. Suddenly, beauty is not passive. It's an active pursuit involving strategies, plans, products, and rituals. Beauty becomes something you work on, like a resume or a home renovation project. By the 1990s, the beauty industry is already using language that suggests prevention, correction, improvement. The seeds planted in the 1980s bloom into a full-blown alphabet of self-monitoring. The 1980s is the decade when beauty becomes corporate. Truly corporate. Cosmetic brands merge with fashion houses. Ad agencies begin scientific testing on what imagery best provokes insecurity. Fitness brands cross-market with magazines. The whole system becomes streamlined, efficient, powerful, global. By the 1990s, beauty advertising is no longer just a branch of marketing. It is a billion-dollar empire with an entire ecosystem orbiting around it. And you can trace that empire straight back to the 1980s, glossy machine revving up its engines. Before the 1980s, celebrities influenced beauty. After the 1980s, they define it. Magazines cement the idea that celebrities are the default beauty authority. What they wear becomes the trend. What they promote becomes the product. and what they represent becomes the cultural goal. Fast forward to later decades and you see the long shadow clearly. Celebrity makeup lines, celebrity skincare brands, celebrity fitness programs, celebrity fragrances. All of it grows from the template the 80s built. As researchers document rising anxiety and dissatisfaction, a new conversation takes shape. Slowly, quietly, then loudly. The 1980s build the problem. The 1990s and 2000s attempt to name it. By the 2010s, body positivity becomes a movement. But the origin, the shift that made body image part of public consciousness, that begins here. The decade forces women to confront the invisible cage the beauty world built around them, and later generations begin working to dismantle it. Even now, if you walk into a drugstore, scroll social media, or glance at a billboard, you can feel the echoes, the perfect skin, the slim waistlines, the flawless hair, the idea that beauty equals worth. The 1980s didn't invent this logic, but they perfected it, mass-distributed it, globalized it. And many of the beauty pressures women face today are simply updated versions of what the decade introduced. The 1980s beauty boom wasn't all doom. It also brought creativity, expression, playfulness. It gave women power suits that made them feel unstoppable. It gave makeup as art, hair as theatre, fashion as self-definition. But the shadow side, the pressure, the comparison, the unattainability, grew alongside the empowerment. The legacy is complicated, messy, textured, like culture itself. By 1989, the glossy machine is fully built. Beauty is an identity, a currency, a cultural conversation, a multi-billion-dollar industry, and a quietly exhausting expectation. And the women standing in checkout lines, flipping through magazines, don't yet realize they're living through a shift that will shape the next 40 years. But history isn't finished with them yet, because next comes the long-term generational impact. The way 1980s beauty culture reaches forward like a well-manicured hand and touches the lives of daughters, nieces, and future women who will inherit the insecurities born in this bright, shiny, complicated decade. As the 1990s approach, conversations about body image, media pressure, and unrealistic standards begin growing louder. The glossy empire remains powerful, but the first cracks in its perfect surface are starting to show. It doesn't crumble dramatically, not yet. There is no single headline, no explosive expose that shatters the beauty machine in one theatrical moment. Instead, the illusion begins to weaken the way ice thins in early spring. Quietly, subtly, almost imperceptibly, until you suddenly realize the ground beneath you isn't as solid as you once believed. The signs are small at first. A journalist publishes a sharp critique questioning why magazines continue promoting bodies only 3% of women naturally have. A psychologist appears on daytime TV discussing eating disorders and their ties to dieting culture. A college campus hosts a student-led forum titled Media and Me, where young women speak openly, sometimes for the first time, about how these images make them feel. The airbrush guns still fire, the models still pose, the covers still glow with impossible perfection. But the spell isn't quite as strong now. More people are beginning to ask, what exactly are we looking at? And why does it have so much power over us? Throughout the late 1980s, the rise of feminism's third wave pushes deeper questions into public space. Women's magazines begin receiving letters, not asking for makeup tips, but challenging the very logic of the beauty rules they publish. Some letters are gentle. I'd love to see more diverse women in your pages. Some are furious. Please stop telling us how to change ourselves. And some are heartbreaking. My daughter won't eat. She thinks she has to look like the models in your magazine. Editors can no longer shrug these off as isolated complaints. They represent something bigger, an emerging awareness that the media's beauty ideal is not just unrealistic, it's harmful. You start seeing small shifts in the magazines themselves. A feature titled Real Women, Real Bodies appears, usually squeezed between 3 ads for diet snacks and a workout routine, but still, it's there. A model with slightly fuller cheeks, still thinner than 99% of humanity, appears in a sidebar. A column discusses self-esteem in a tone that implies the writers might actually be starting to care. Television also helps crack the veneer. Suddenly, talk shows begin airing episodes about the pressures women face. Guests cry on national TV about dieting, bullying, body dysmorphia. Books analysing beauty culture become mainstream, not niche. The curtain is lifting. Not all at once, and not completely, but enough for women to begin noticing the man behind the metaphorical beauty machine, frantically turning knobs and levers he hopes no one sees. Meanwhile, a new cultural force enters the arena, grunge. And with grunge comes a rebellion not just against fashion, but against effort. Suddenly, the ideal becomes messy hair, flannel shirts, and a level of indifference to appearance that feels almost medicinal after a decade of high-gloss obsession. Magazines don't know what to do with this. Hot pink aerobics outfits and towering shoulder pads don't exactly pair with Nirvana. So they adapt, slowly, awkwardly, introducing a natural beauty trend that still somehow requires 6 products and a coordinated strategy. But the illusion keeps cracking. Women begin rolling their eyes at diet ads. Some skip over the comparison-heavy advice columns. A quiet suspicion forms. Maybe perfection was never the point. Maybe it was always the bait. In the academic world, studies explode. Researchers publish papers linking media exposure to body dissatisfaction, depression, disordered eating. These findings catch press attention, then public attention, and slowly become common knowledge. Parents begin noticing their young daughters pinching their stomachs in the mirror. High school counselors report spikes in anxiety. Magazines are forced to acknowledge, not publicly but internally, that people are waking up, and that awakening becomes a cultural force of its own. By 1990, the glossy empire is still powerful, but something important has changed. People are no longer accepting the story at face value. They're beginning to read between the lines, and once you start reading between the lines, you can't go back to simply admiring the pictures. The illusion hasn't shattered yet, but the cracks are spreading. Soon, those cracks will evolve into full-blown cultural revolutions around beauty, identity, and representation. But before the world can rewrite the rules, it must fully understand the weight of the ones that came before. And that brings us to the final chapter. What all of this, every diet tip, every fashion spread, every airbrushed cheekbone, ultimately did to an entire generation. Somewhere in the mid-1980s, a small metal object quietly gains enormous authority in millions of homes, the bathroom scale. It sits there in the corner like a silent referee, waiting patiently for its moment each morning. You step on it half asleep, and suddenly your entire mood for the day is decided by a tiny needle sliding left or right. Fashion magazines help to make that number feel deeply important. Articles explained your ideal weight range with charts and calculations that looked suspiciously scientific. If the number was too high, you didn't just feel heavy, you felt like you'd somehow failed an invisible test you didn't remember signing up for. It wasn't always this way. Your grandmother might have owned a scale, but she treated it like a casual acquaintance, something to check once in a while, not a daily moral evaluation. But by the 1980s, the scale has been promoted, unofficially, but effectively, to the role of a household oracle. You approach it cautiously, reverently, like it might reveal lottery numbers or deliver a prophecy about your future. You wake up, shuffle to the bathroom, brush your teeth, and then there it is, waiting. a cold metal truth teller. You step on gently, as if trying not to startle it. You hold your breath because everyone knows that air weighs something, and your lungs must remain neutrally buoyant for accurate readings. The scale wobbles for a moment. The needle hesitates, then settles, and in that tiny movement barely the width of a fingernail, your entire emotional forecast shifts. If the number drops, you feel proud, accomplished, virtuous, as if you just negotiated world peace before breakfast. If the number rises, a quiet shame washes over you, heavy and familiar. You review everything you ate the day before with the scrutiny of a forensic accountant. And it's not just you. Women across the decade are developing the same ritual, the same reaction, the same sinking feeling that a bad number means something is wrong, not with the scale, not with the measurement system, not with the cultural standard, but with you. This is not accidental. Magazines teach women that weight is not a measurement, it is a verdict. They print charts titled Ideal Body Weight, complete with ranges based on height, bone structure, and mysterious categories no one fully understands. They use phrases like healthy target range and optimal figure, which sound like they were written by medical professionals but were actually crafted by editors who majored in communications. The scale becomes a scoreboard. You step on it daily or multiple times daily, not because you need to, but because the magazines imply that being vigilant equals being responsible. Monitoring your body becomes part of managing your life. The psychological shift is subtle but profound. Your body becomes a problem. Your weight becomes the answer. The scale becomes the judge. And like any judge, it has the power to punish. Many women in the 1980s describe avoiding breakfast after a bad weigh-in. Others begin cutting calories aggressively. Some step on the scale multiple times a day, hoping it will change like a slot machine finally paying out. Teen girls sneak into bathrooms at night to weigh themselves, terrified that their parents might discover they're over the acceptable limit, a limit created by magazine editors, not biology. Even the language around weight changes. People begin saying they were good or bad depending on what the scale said. They say they cheated on their diet. They say they really need to be more disciplined. Eating becomes a moral activity. Weight becomes a character assessment. And the scale, just a simple tool with springs and metal parts, becomes a tyrant. But here's the quiet tragedy. No matter the number, the magazines will always tell you there's still work to be done. Lose 5 pounds, you could lose 5 more. Hit your ideal weight. Now focus on toning. Already toned? Try sculpting. Feel good about yourself? Well, here's a new article titled, Why You Still Need to Slim Down for Summer. The scale is never satisfied. Neither are the magazines. Neither eventually are the women reading them. And this ritual, the morning weigh-in, the anxious anticipation, the emotional fallout becomes generational. A habit passed down unintentionally, silently inherited. Girls watch their mothers step on the scale and sigh. Teenagers begin weighing themselves before school. Entire families come to believe that weight is a central measure of worth. By the end of the decade, millions of women can track their weight to the decimal, but cannot remember the last time they looked in the mirror without criticism. And that's the real power of the bathroom scale in the 1980s. It's not a device for measuring mass. It's a device for teaching women to measure themselves. But every cultural force has a limit. Every silent judge eventually faces rebellion. Because as the decades turn and conversations shift, a new movement begins to whisper something radical. Your worth does not live on a metal platform in your bathroom. And that realization, gentle but unstoppable, will shape the next wave of cultural change. And now, the magazines are closed for the night. The lights in the mall have dimmed, the aerobics tapes have stopped rewinding, and somewhere the last can of 1980s hairspray has finally settled into silence. You made it through the decade, through the neon workouts, The endless beauty routines, the suspicious diet tips, and the quiet pressure of glossy pages that seemed very confident about what a woman was supposed to look like. It wasn't always fair, and it certainly wasn't easy. For millions of women, the 1980s came with an invisible scoreboard, numbers on scales, measurements in inches, and magazine covers that seemed to whisper that perfection was always just one more effort away. But the truth, like most things in history, is a little kinder and a little more human than the magazines ever admitted, because the real story of that generation isn't just about beauty standards or fashion trends. It's about resilience. It's about ordinary people navigating a world that was rapidly changing. More women entering workplaces, more independence, more voices slowly pushing back against impossible expectations. Behind every glossy cover was a real person living a real life. Women who worked long hours, raised families, built careers, supported friends, laughed at ridiculous trends, and quietly ignored at least half of the advice those magazines tried to sell them. And over time, the conversation began to change. People started asking questions. Who decides what beauty looks like? Why should a magazine get the final vote on how a body is supposed to exist? Little by little, the perfect image began to crack, and the voices of real women started getting louder than the glossy pages. So tonight, as you lie there in a warm bed, wearing whatever comfortable clothes you chose for yourself, maybe take a quiet moment to appreciate how far things have come. No magazine editor is hiding in your room measuring your waistline. No aerobics instructor is demanding one more set of lunges before sunrise. And the only person allowed to judge your reflection in the mirror is you. History can be strange like that. Sometimes it's full of kings and wars and dramatic events, and sometimes it's a stack of fashion magazines that accidentally shape the way an entire generation thought about themselves. But people are stubborn, they adapt, they learn, they push back, and eventually they rewrite the rules. So as you drift off tonight, remember this small truth that history leaves behind again and again. Trends fade, magazines age. Beauty standards change every few decades like the seasons, but human resilience, that part tends to stick around. Now take a slow breath. Slow. Let your shoulders relax. The magazines are closed, the lights are off, and the 1980s are finally quiet. Sleep well,